On today's episode of Let's Talk Drones, the podcast, we'll be joined by Yuval Caspi of Skywatch. Skywatch is an aviation insurance company specializing in drones and working with drone pilots. Skywatch is creating innovative, easy-to-use tools for drone pilots to fly safely, manage their flights seamlessly, and make sure their flights are insured at a reasonable price. What's up? It's Chris, the Drone Geek, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Drones. Today is a podcast edition, and I am so happy to be joined by Yuval Caspi from skywatch.ai. Yuval, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm excited to be speaking here with you today. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to have you guys. And I was really excited because you were one of the first, recognizable names in the drone community that actually followed me on social media back. And I was super stoked because I thought, I use these guys for my commercial work. So, it's really cool to have you here. And I think that you're going to bring a really unique perspective in terms of conversations within the drone industry, because you talk a lot about regulations. You talk a lot about how to fly, the methods for editing your footage, or using the software that you use to accomplish your mission with your drone. But the one thing that isn't really talked about in great detail is drone insurance. And I think it's lost on some people how important that is, especially for a commercial pilot.
Absolutely. And I think I'm actually glad that you mentioned, following each other on social media, because I think sometimes it's like not the most traditional thought to have your insurance company follow you on social media or to interact with your insurance company of all things, But for us, it is very important to actually, on one hand, we are an insurance company, but on the other hand, we want to work closely with drone pilots so that we can make sure that we're fitting exactly what they need in the commercial industry. And we don't want to just be, an insurance company as a back thought. We really want to be invested in our pilots so that we're there to help make sure that commercial operations can take place safely and insured, of course. So we're always happy to interact on social media and engage, and we're happy to follow each other. So just a little note on that. And definitely, I think that we're going to have a great conversation. So I'm happy to answer any questions that, you feel are important, or talk about any important details about insurance.
Absolutely. So I guess before we jump into all of the conversation we need to have about Skywatch, I want to get to know you a little bit better. Can you tell us, how long have you been with Skywatch? What do you do there? And, what role do you play rather in helping the company accomplish their goals?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been working at Skywatch since January of 2019. And basically, when I started working, we really had the product, obviously it was developed and we were selling drone insurance, but it wasn't fully established the way that it is today in terms of features and development and tech capabilities. We were offering basically on-demand coverage through an app. So you could buy, a on-demand hourly or monthly policy through your phone. And that was pretty much it. And since I started working there, very quickly there was, we came out with a web portal so you could activate the insurance online. You could get a monthly policy, you get an annual policy. You could start adding all these features to the policy. And basically the way that we were able to do that was by talking directly with drone pilots, right? Because there is a need for drone insurance. Today, we know that commercial operators a lot of times have to prove their insurance. And so kind of what we did was it was kind of like backwards almost, in the sense of like, let's develop our product based on what are the requirements in the industry. So basically what I started out doing was really just kind of marketing, getting the name out there, and then really talking face-to-face with everyday clients, potential clients, to really understand what the needs are of the commercial industry. So, simple things like having a certificate of insurance available instantaneously, or adding a co-pilot, adding a co-pilot to your policy, all these things that came out of conversations with pilots, with clients, and then basically taking that information and returning it back to our development team so that we could really further enhance our product to serve pilots properly. And today, I really think that we have, managed to excel within what we're able to offer. if you look just on our portal or on our app, I mean, so much of the policy management for pilots is available individually. You're able to really go in and kind of modify your coverage and bind your policy based on what you need. And yeah, I think that like for me, working over the past 2 years, really what I've been doing is kind of being the messenger between the development team and the actual drone pilots. To kind of understand where we need to meet. And also, of course, with that being said, I'm also a licensed broker. So I also am able to kind of help people understand what their policy entails, what each coverage means, and then also speak with clients. Sometimes people don't understand what is being asked of them. They're like, get me this, liability limit or words that are only known in the insurance world. And so I can also be a point of contact to kind of speak with the client and make sure that insurance is approved so that people can, get to work on time.
Yeah. And with the nature of the drone industry, myself being a commercial pilot, I've encountered a lot of situations that are very touch and go. So you'd mentioned earlier about getting that certificate of insurance. Almost instantaneously when you sign up for, just an on the spot policy, or if you've got a long-term policy where you're paying, monthly or annually, whatever the case may be, you have that certificate of insurance almost immediately after, cementing your policy. And that's super helpful, especially in our shoes, because I can't tell you how many times I've had a client who in the past hasn't asked me for proof of insurance, and maybe I didn't necessarily feel like it was totally necessary for that particular shoot. And then all of a sudden they have a different location that does require insurance because there's a high level of liability. And it's like, well, I do a on the spot policy, not so much of a regular one. So it's really nice to be able to have that coverage and then also have the proof of that coverage for your client almost immediately. It's super convenient. So that's something that Skywatch does just so well. And I can't say that I've really shopped around for insurance. I've always used Skywatch when it was necessary. So I don't know how other companies handle it, but I know that you guys do it really well.
So I'll tell you what, for us, like having that proof of insurance is one of the most important things, right? Because of course, I want to believe that everyone's getting insurance because they want to be safe and they want to have it. But a lot of times it's because it's obviously for commercial use. And in that case, having that proof of insurance immediately is so important. And so as soon as you bind a policy, you automatically get a COI to your email, so you can download it. And one thing that we've even done kind of to take that one step further is we allow pilots to actually pre-book the policy. So let's say you have an operation coming up in 2 weeks, but you need to kind of get all your paperwork in line now and get all your agreements in place. You can pre-book the policy, and even then you'll get the COI, immediately. And then you'll have a COI that says that the start dates are 2 weeks in advance, but you can rest assured that you're set and that you have all the paperwork that you need. So that's something that's like really been upfront for us, important to be able to give that capability to give the paperwork on time. And also an important thing about the certificate of insurance is that they also need to be modified, right? So if you have one monthly policy, but 4 different clients during that month, each one of them wants to see it, and each one of those clients wants to be listed on the policy as well, right? So, you need to have the capabilities to change that and get an updated version as you need. And that's also something that we've really invested a lot of time in making sure that we have that capability as well. And definitely something that we offer today.
Yeah. And before we move on to the next few questions I have for you too, I wanted to ask, just curiosity, is it more common for pilots that use Skywatch to do like a flight by flight insurance policy? Or do you have a lot of pilots or an increasing number of pilots that are actually doing a more sort of like your auto insurance, you pay annually or monthly for, continuous coverage over any operation that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I go ahead and answer that, maybe I'll just do a quick run through of kind of what we offer, and then I can kind of explain like what case scenarios would be right for who and when.
Sure.
So basically we offer 3 different types of policies by duration. So essentially you can get a policy that is by the hour. So, if you needed it just for 1 day of coverage, up to 8 hours, you could do so. And that's going to be available only through our app, right? So you have to download the app and specify where it is that you're flying and get the policy active for that day and location. We then also offer a monthly policy and an annual policy, and that's going to offer coverage during the entire duration of the month or the year. And of course, this is a rolling year. So rolling month and year. So like, let's say you start the policy on the 5th, it'll renew on the 5th or whatever. It doesn't have to be like the, first of the month. All policies, so all three of those that I just mentioned, those all provide third-party aviation liability for property damage, bodily injury, any damage that your drone causes to somebody else. That's the foundation of the policy. And then if you want, on the monthly and the annual option, you can always add the physical coverage protection for the drone. So if the drone crashes and that needs to be replaced, you have the ability to also add that onto your monthly or annual policy and get that damage replaced. So basically, all of those options are, great options. You're going to have the coverage that you need no matter which duration you take. But kind of what we recommend taking into consideration is, going for a flight-by-flight policy, maybe when you're just getting started or you're at the beginning and you don't necessarily know what your month is going to look like in terms of commercial operations, right? So you kind of just want to get the ball rolling and understand, and you don't want to pay up front for a monthly premium. That's a great option. And also if you have the flexibility. So basically, as I mentioned, the hourly policies, they're dependent on location. So if you know for certain that you're flying in a given location, it's great to get that kind of policy, but sometimes plans change, time changes, location changes, and it can be a little bit less flexible. Of course, you can always, plan your flight, and then if you need to cancel the policy, you will be refunded, but it's a little bit more time consuming and requires that each pilot spends the time to activate the policy, physically through the app and everything. So, if time is, on your side and you're not in a rush to get things in place, then that could also be a good time to go for the on-demand hourly. Monthly policies, I would say, is when you have at least, let's say, if you have 6 or more flights in a month, whether they're recreational or commercial, a monthly option is probably going to be most suitable for you, just because it doesn't require you to plan out your location. You're free to fly during the entire month. You have one certificate of insurance that says like policy territory within the United States and the dates and times. And then you can really fly with peace of mind, knowing that that insurance is always in place. And during that month, you can always modify your COI if you need to. So you can always get a new certificate of insurance if you have a new project coming up. It's really just flexible. It gives pilots peace of mind for flying safely during the month. And then the annual policy, I would say, is for anyone who, knows that the year ahead has plenty of commercial jobs lined up and don't want to worry about insurance, just want to be covered at all times during the year. That's a great option. Another great advantage of the annual policy is that the hull premium rate, so if you want to add that physical damage coverage, is a little bit lower. So if you have multiple drones and you're flying all year, it just sometimes makes more sense to take an annual policy because it's going to be significantly cheaper with the hull rates.
Okay, and that you said something interesting there in terms of the multiple drones. So would an annual policy cover an entire fleet of drones, or would you have to get a policy per drone in that particular scenario?
No, so that's a great question. So all of our policies offer you as the pilot liability no matter which drone you're using. So let's say you have 4 different drones and you don't know which one you're going to be operating that day. Your policy will cover you, and we don't ask to specify which drone is in use because we're covering you for third-party damage, right? So you could have 10 drones insured under one liability policy, essentially. But if anything were to happen to that drone and the only damage that resulted from the accident was that the drone is now a total loss, it won't be covered because you only have the liability portion. You would need to add that physical damage coverage. And with that, you can add as many drones onto your policy as you want. So if you have 4 drones, you want to list all 4 of them. That way, all of them are insured if anything happens, both in terms of third-party liability and damage to the drone. So it's really up to you and kind of what your needs are and what type of drone you're using, of course. But the third-party liability is really the most essential aspect of the insurance, obviously, because heaven forbid somebody else is hurt or a property is damaged. That's really where the hardships kind of come in. And so that's why that's like the standard, that's a standard portion. And then the physical damage is really just up to you to decide. And of course, we understand that drone pilots also change their fleet often. You might like buy and exchange drones. You might start off with the Phantom and then add on equipment. So you always have the option to modify it. So even if you have a yearly policy with one drone listed and then 6 months in, you sold that drone, you bought a new one, you do have the option to exchange the drones on your policy. You don't have to activate a new policy.
Oh, see, that's very cool. And I know that a lot of my commercial drone pilot friends, that I talk to them about insurance every once in a while. And I ask them, how do you handle it? Do you have annual, monthly? Who do you work with? And the thing that scares most of them away from those longer commitment plans like monthly or annually is the price tag. So they see it and they have two problems with the price tag on average. Is one, am I, exactly like you indicated, am I going to have enough jobs this month to be able to justify that cost? And two, how much am I covered for? What that belongs to me is covered. What do I get if something does happen that will protect me? And I think that what Skywatch offers, it sort of justifies that cost. And not everybody offers as comprehensive as a package as you do. With that haul insurance, with that liability insurance for damage to other people's property or other persons. So it does make sense more so on your level when you look at that monthly and that annual cost per package. And if you don't mind my asking, what are your current price tags for your there? I mean, I know that the flight by flight depends upon where you're at, what kind of airspace you're navigating and the liability involved. But for your monthly and your annual packages, what is the price tag on that currently?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically when it comes to monthly and annual policies, the price is determined by the liability limit that you select. So if you go with a 1 million policy or 2 million, obviously the prices vary like that. 1 month of liability coverage with us. Now, when I say 1 month, I mean all flights within that 1 month policy period. That's $62. $500,000 is $42. And then if you're talking about annual, so 1 year of liability, all flights, all drones, everything, that's $750 for the year at 1 million and $500 for $500,000. Now, all of that's like the base rate, right? So that's like the simple liability coverage. Of course, anything that you want to add on to your policy. So, hull coverage, or I don't know, if you're flying indoors and you need indoor coverage, things like that, that's all going to increase the premium. But with that being said, we also do offer discounts. I can kind of touch upon that in just, when we get to that point in the conversation. But we do have like a lot of different, we have 2 different discount offerings, which help. And again, another thing that I think, obviously price always plays a role in everything. But I think for that peace of mind to be able to fly commercially and know that, if anything happens, yes, you will have to obviously deal with it and take precautions to, make sure things are taken care of. But essentially you have somebody to really handle your claim, take care of, payments and things like that. And that in and of itself is a huge resource. If you find yourself in a situation where you have caused property damage and, you need to now pay out this claim, that's additional work on your load of all your other commercial operations. And when you have this insurance in place and you can work with the claims adjuster and work with our team to make sure that, you're being paid out for whatever damages and that you can get a new drone if you need to, that in and of itself is also worth a lot, I think. And just an important, added note. But of course, if anyone wants like a specific quote, we're able to generate quotes automatically on our portal. So, everyone's always able to reach out to us to get an exact quote for what their premium would be.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess the other question I have is when you look at professional drone insurance, people that are flying commercially and the importance, it's pretty obvious why it would be important, but there are other options outside of the commercial insurance that might be enticing for some drone pilots that aren't familiar with the commercial drone insurance market. For instance, when I first started flying drones, the first place I sought out an insurance plan, because again, I wasn't familiar with the market itself, was State Farm. I went to State Farm and they were able to give me an insurance policy, but that doesn't work quite the same way as what you folks offer. Do you have any information that you can share on the differences between what you offer and what a policy like State Farm would offer, and why it's important to go with actual drone aviation insurance as opposed to a policy from State Farm?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I can't speak totally to State Farm's policy just because I'm not familiar with it. I haven't reviewed obviously the conditions and terms, so I don't want to say too much on, what they're offering. But what I do know, and this is obviously standard in all insurance, is like, when you have a policy that is kind of a combination package. So I don't know if you have, your cars and your home is also insured on State Farm, and then also your drones. If you're going to file a claim for a drone accident, essentially your entire package premium will go up, right? Because that's the nature of how insurance works. So obviously, having a bundle package could be great in some situations, but it can also affect you long-term on other lines of insurance. So if you have a drone accident and ultimately are suffering the consequences on your car insurance after, or your home insurance, obviously that's going to be a huge setback. A second thing that I want to say is that I'm not sure always the difference between commercial and recreational. So like, for example, Skywatch policy will cover you for recreational and commercial flights. And a lot of times some of the other companies who will only offer recreational. So like if you're a homeowner that's insured with State Farm, obviously, again, I don't know exactly State Farm's conditions, but they might say like, oh, no problem, we're going to insure you for your drone use, but only if it's like, in the backyard and you're flying recreationally. If you're hired as a commercial pilot for somebody else, I don't know if that's going to be included. And it's important that you work with a broker or you look in your policy to understand that before you accept a job offer. And so those are, two big reasons. And the third reason being, going back to kind of what I started out saying, is that yes, Skywatch is an insurance company, but we really put our focus on the drone industry. So really what we do is like work to better our insurance and our service, that it caters to the needs of drone pilots. So if you have a job coming up and you are like, I don't understand any of these requirements, I don't understand what they need from me, and you pick up the phone and you call one of our support agents, they'll finish the sentences for you. Like this is really what we do. We work with drone pilots all over the United States to make sure that commercial jobs are approved and are ready to go. And we have a very, very strong understanding of what is needed from commercial drone operators, that we're able to cut down the process for you significantly, right? Because if you come to us with a certain request, we already have the capabilities to handle it. We have, the endorsements needed, the language required. We understand exactly that, those requests, because that's what we're dealing with. We're catering specifically to drone pilots. And I think that gives us a leg up on other companies who, are working in lines of insurance everywhere and are, kind of less flexible than we are, I would say, in the sense of, protocol, and they have like the one way that they do it. And if it's not familiar, it's out of their reach. And we really aren't like that. I can really vouch and say that when I started in 2019, half of the things that we do today weren't there, not because we didn't want to, but just because the understanding the need wasn't there yet. And that's really what we've done over the past 2 years, is like really invest in understanding what the needs are so that our service aligns with that. And I think that gives a lot of flexibility to drone pilots who need, to ask their drone insurance related questions, that they can come to us and, not have to worry that we're going to have to refer them elsewhere because we deal with a different line of insurance.
Sure.
And I think that's really the biggest value.
Absolutely. And just before we move on, because actually you made a statement that I'd like to bridge off of with another question. But before we do that, can you take us through the process? Because I think a lot of people are familiar with how to file an insurance claim. I mean, we've all been in a fender bender, or most of us have anyway. So we're familiar with how the insurance process works, but it is scaled a little bit differently in a drone scenario, drone related scenario. So can you tell us, let's say I'm out in a field or not out in a field, I'm flying in Lancaster City and I accidentally put my drone through a window, and I call you guys and I say, hey, I had an accident. I was insured with you folks. What happens now? Can you walk us through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. So first of all, we have really digitalized everything. So of course you can call us and we'll be happy to, help walk you through. But just by logging into your Skywatch account, there's an online claims portal. And basically what you'll do is you'll just, whether you're on your phone, you need to do it immediately, or whether you've gotten home and, need to log in and do that, you'll basically be asked to submit all your details online so that you can kind of generate a report. Right. So the types of questions that are asked are obviously, given the location, what happened, the damages that were involved, the people that were there that witnessed the event, just really gather all those details. So of course, going back to like the scene where the accident happened, you know, whether that means taking pictures or getting numbers of witnesses who were on scene and saw the damage happen, that is also helpful and useful. Making sure you have all that. And then also you're going to need to upload a copy of your FAA Part 107 certificate. So if you were flying commercially, of course, we're going to want to see a copy of that. And then all of this information can just be submitted directly online. We get a report and we're very quickly able to generate that back to our underwriter to get the claim processed and underway. Now, one really, really important part about filing a claim with us is that we also ask for the flight log. So basically, we want to just kind of see what happened that caused the drone to cause this damage. You know, did the flight actually take place when the claim was submitted, things like that. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, getting a flight log from a drone today is a fairly easy process. You know, no matter which drone app you're using or whatever drone you're using, it's pretty easy to access that. So of course we recommend, you know, if you're not able to, or if, you know, heaven forbid something happened and you're not able to get that, of course you can still go ahead and file the claim, but this is something that is always going to be followed up and asked for. So I think it is important for pilots to know. And I think even not with regards to claims, I think it's important for pilots to know to look at their logs and, you know, record them and watch them from time to time and understand, you know, things that happen. So I always think it's important for people to have access to their flight logs, and especially in an event of a claim, to know that you will be asked to submit the specific flight log of when the accident took place. And then so I, of course, directly am not part of the claims team. So I'm just speaking like from experience and from what I know, the more information that's provided, the faster and the easier the process goes. So like if we have a pilot who files a claim and immediately in the claim submission puts in the flight log, puts in his or her FAA Part 107 certificate, you know, puts in all the details. Maybe there was pictures or there was a witness on scene, and puts all that detail in, the claim can be paid out within that week, essentially. And, you know, the pilot can go out and get a new drone or have his or her drone repaired and be flying within a matter of days after filing the claim. So I do think that obviously, you know, it's super important for us to play a part in making sure that the claim submission goes smoothly. But when it's a two-way street and when the pilot actually brings in all the details in advance, that's really what makes the most efficient process. So definitely to keep in mind to have all your belongings. You know, sometimes people, they don't have their drone registration number, or they lost it, or, you know, and now they have to file a claim. And just having all of your ducks in a row before a claim happens and making sure that you're organized in the event of a claim is what's going to make it much easier if you actually do have to file a claim at any point.
No, what's the craziest claim that you guys have ever gotten? Do you have any examples you can share?
So I myself don't review the claims so much. I'm more kind of like the mediator. You know, if somebody has to file a claim, I'll kind of direct them on how to do it, and I'll help modify their fleet afterwards. So, you know, if their drone crashed and they need to take it off the policy and now they need to add a new one, that's kind of where I step in. But I know that our claims team has really seen it all, from property damage and bodily injury to drone, destruction, like even having a car roll over a drone in the driveway. We've seen that happen too. I really don't think that there's a limit to the, you know, wildest things that they've seen.
Now, I guess that segues into another question. This one's a little bit more serious and to the point. Let's say I'm flying my drone over the ocean. There are a lot of insurance policies, both drone specific and general, that would require me to have some remnant of the drone present so that I can say, look what happened to my drone. With Skywatch, let's say I'm doing a nice commercial shoot for a client over the ocean and my drone just dies out and falls in. Is there anything aside from the flight log that I have to provide to prove to you that, hey, I lost this in the ocean, or how does that work?
No, so that's a great point. And that goes right back to my flight log, story. Basically, that's exactly what we require, because we will insure you and we will replace the drone if it fell into the water and it's non-retrievable.
Mm-hmm.
The same is for like a flyaway. If your drone disappears and you can't get a knot in the water, it's still considered insured under our hull coverage. But we will ask to see a flight log, and that shouldn't be an issue because, assuming the drone fell into water, your controller or your phone has access to the flight log still. So that's kind of what makes it easy for us to say, like, we'll still insure it. Just show us, what happened, when it took place. This drone really did disappear. We see it in the flight logs. So yeah, we don't like disqualify, a non-retrievable drone.
Okay, gotcha. That's good to know, because I do have friends that have flown that live near the beach, and they talk about how afraid they are to lose their drone in the water. Not so much because it's something they can't afford or that they don't have covered, but they're worried about the headache that comes with explaining that to an insurance company or to their drone manufacturer when they go to get a replacement or to get financing for a replacement. Absolutely.
And unfortunately, flying over water does oftentimes result in a crash, or in a loss. So definitely understand the concern there. But again, because it is something that we have seen and it's become something that we have dealt with, once we have that flight log and we're able to get all your other information, like your pilot details. And, one time I actually, now speaking of stories, that does remind me, I had somebody who had that happen where the drone was, he wasn't able to get the drone back. And he happened to have his lawyer or one of his friends who's a lawyer was like with them. It was like they were flying like, on their back, they were standing on the back of the house over the water or whatever. And his friend happened to be a lawyer and signed an affidavit, saying I was with so-and-so at this time. And basically, testifying that this happened. So we have the steps to take, and we don't, we're not going to say, no, we're not going to insure that because you don't have the drone anymore. But again, it just goes to show that when you have the details, when you have a witness in place, or when you have the flight log, everything is taken care of sooner.
Oh, absolutely. That flight log, you emphasized it great, and I couldn't emphasize it enough how important it is to keep track of those files, because they truly do, whether it's insurance related or not, help you out in so many situations when it comes to proving something related to your flight or your drone. I do want to go back a couple steps. We talked a little bit about how you've developed as a company and the services that you offer, and how it's not necessarily the same as when you started even back in 2019. We're looking at a future, and I'm willing to bet that in the next 2 years, maybe 3 years, we're going to see drone delivery on a much, much larger scale than where it is right now, which is very much in a beta stage. How is Skywatch preparing to scale that? Because I know that as these companies, both bigger ones like UPS and FedEx and smaller delivery companies that are going to tap into this technology to make deliveries, they're going to need very specific types of services from an insurance company, because they're going to have a very high level of liability overall. Is there anything Skywatch is doing to get ready for that increase in scale?
Yeah, so I would say, I wouldn't say that it's like something that we're, working on in depth right now to scale for those particular operations. We are working, to scale in terms of all operations. But really, another thing that I think is really great about our coverage is that our policies are already so comprehensive that, whether you're an individual pilot or whether you are a company with, multiple drone pilots, you can all get the same type of policy, right? So our policy can be adapted to whoever is using it. Obviously, if somebody is flying, like let's say there's a company that has, like a bunch of different pilots with a bunch of different drones and a bunch of different operations happening everywhere, we can take out multiple policies, and then there's like multiple coverages in place for essentially the same coverage, the same company, excuse me. There's a lot of things that we can do with our current offerings to adapt them to other people's needs. And I think that's kind of what's important to mention here. So like, for example, with like smaller scale deliveries right now, there's like individual operators who get kind of the kit and then go off and do their own thing through a third party. So right now we'll provide insurance for all of those people individually. But we can also do a lot of other things. So if a company wants to come to us and get a policy and list all of their pilots under the policy, we're also able to do that. And I think that really goes back to like the whole talking with our pilots and kind of understanding the needs, because we work with an underwriter. Obviously, we have a place to kind of take these requests as they come and work quickly on our feet to adapt to the current situation or the current requirements. So yeah, I don't have an answer for you on like what we're going to do or how it's going to look, but we have the skills and the abilities to kind of take it as it comes and make sure that we match our policies to what's required. And it really is a matter, I think that so right now, you can go online to Skywatch and activate a policy. You don't need a broker, you don't need anyone, you're able to do it by yourself. I think that when it comes to a more complex operation, and when we're talking about big companies with big operations and a lot of liability, that, digital aspect is great, but it's, there's no replacement for human interaction and talking to a broker. And I think that that's going to be key. And that goes back to what I was saying about, State Farm or other companies that have all different lines of insurance. They might not have a dedicated drone specialist, whereas that's what we do have. So you will want to talk to a broker. You'll want to talk to someone who knows what's going on and what the industry standard is. And that's what we're dedicated to doing. So when that issue arises, you come to us with your request or whatever the need be, and we'll have the solution for it.
That's excellent. That's awesome. And I guess on that same note, and I don't know how much you can talk about this. I know that especially when it comes to companies that are in the virtual retail world, and I don't want to necessarily say you're retail, that's not true, but companies that have virtual products and they have products they have to develop through an app or whatever the case may be, keep these close to the chest. But what is it that you guys are working on right now? I mean, are you working on expanding any interesting services that drone pilots get excited about that might make the process more streamlined? Not that it's not already streamlined, or that might add features to your app that go outside of just drone insurance. I see a lot of these non-flight specific apps that, the the UAV forecasts of the world that are telling you what the weather conditions. They're now implementing maps that tell you about the airspace around you. Is that something that you work on, or do you have any examples of something like that you might be working on?
Yeah, so right now our app does already have, it's integrated with I believe it's Dark Sky is what it's called, and Google Maps, obviously. So it is already integrated with, and like having the risks that come up, that's all already developed essentially. What I can say, so when we first came out with our, so the first thing that we had was the app, right? And then we took it online to a web portal. And when we started, it was super basic, right? You could basically, all you could do is activate the policy. And once you activated it, that was it. You activated it, everything else had to be done through customer support. And in the past year, what we did was not only transform the user experience, but open up all these capabilities. So adding additional insurance on your own, turning off auto renew, adding a drone. All these things were added onto the capability. So now you can bind the policy and do so much more. But we didn't develop our app in the same way. So basically now the web portal has all these features and the app does too, but the user experience isn't as good because it's just not up to date. It's good in the sense that it's all there, but it's still, there's a little bit of confusion, or maybe it's not as popular as the web is. And one of the things that we're working on now is redesigning the whole user experience on the app. So that's going to be released. I don't know exactly when, but it's definitely in the works. Just to kind of make for a more friendly, mobile experience, and take all the features that we already do have and just make it more, streamlined and seamless. And another thing that we do, we recently, it's also not so advanced as Skywatch drone insurance, but we also started working with pilots of manned aircraft as well to sell aviation policies for not, a lot of times people who operate drones are former pilots or vice versa. So it's a lot of the same language, a lot of the same policy types, aviation liability in general, with the hull coverage and everything like that. So we also have been starting to work with private pilots as well to get them general aircraft insurance. And hopefully, sometime soon we'll have some sort of streamlined process the same way that we do with Skywatch drone insurance. But essentially the thought is that, you can kind of have a one-stop aviation insurance shop. So if you have both a private plane and a drone, you can talk to us and get both your policies, and have one place to do all of your aviation policy modifications.
That's excellent. And one place is, I think, what a lot of drone pilots look for. I'll tell you exactly what somebody like myself is looking for. And I think I echo the sentiment for a lot of other people. I would love to see in the future an app like Skywatch that offers me the insurance protection that I need per flight or on a monthly or annual basis, whatever's right for me. But I'd also really like it if I could get any kind of clearances that I need for, my flight. And I know that there's a lot of hoops that go into, that you have to jump through to get into that. But being able to get LANC authorization and my insurance all in one spot would make things just so much easier, because it seems stupid that I would, be frustrated by this, but nothing's more frustrating than trying to keep all of my apps straight, going to Skywatch, getting my insurance, but then having to get out of Skywatch to go somewhere like before you fly to get my LANC, or to going to Kitty Hawk to get my LANC, or vice versa. You can mix that scenario up any way you want. It would be really, really cool to see that all-inclusive app. And I've viewed your apps your maps that tell you the story about the liability that is involved with flying in a certain area. Right. Has there been any looking into actually integrating a LANC system into that, or is that not something you've explored quite yet?
No, so it definitely is something that's explored, and I don't know too well on the topic. I'm not too knowledgeable on this topic, so I don't want to, mislead anyone.
Sure.
About that, but it's definitely something that's been talked about, and I know that people who do have that approval have been able to activate policies with us. I do want to say, though, that for those situations, this kind of brings me back to what we talked about at the beginning about when is the right policy right for you? You know what I mean? Because when you have a monthly policy, you're not asked to specify where it is that you're flying. You have to have full coverage. And that way, you don't even need to go into the Skywatch app. You have your policy document, you have your COI, and anything that you need, any other approvals, it's, taken care of on our end. We don't require you to take any additional steps. And that's a really good solution. A lot of times, I'll have a pilot will tell me that they're flying tomorrow a really important mission, and it's in a controlled airspace, that they can't activate a policy. Well, if you get a monthly policy, you don't have that concern, right? Because that policy takes into consideration that you have the authorization to fly in that restricted airspace, right? We know that you're not just going to go to some, place and fly, if you don't have the authorization to do that. And that's why we're willing to give you a certificate of insurance that says anytime and anywhere in the United States. So that's also something to take into consideration. If you know that you have a month that you're coming up with a lot of different bureaucratic steps, and you're gonna have to get this approval and that approval, maybe getting a monthly policy just for that monthly period could be helpful. And then you can always go back to hourly after that month ends.
Okay. Yeah. That's super helpful to know what your outlook is and how you see it and what you recommend for pilots, because I think, again, it sort of goes back to a point that we talked about earlier. A lot of first-time commercial pilots and first-time recreational pilots too, I don't want to leave them out of this conversation, don't understand the importance of having an insurance policy on your drone, because it just seems like, I spend a lot of money on this, but is it something that I would necessarily need insurance for? And I think that a lot of people try to cut those corners. So that's the first point. But I think the second point is that they look at those price tags and they don't think about all of the business side of things when it comes to how you price your drone work, and then factoring in the cost of a monthly insurance membership, not just because of the price tag on it, but also the benefit it brings you when you do have something that's monthly or annually. It takes the headache away, like you said, of having to open the app every time you want to fly to get an on-the-spot insurance policy. You have that cleared. You don't have to worry about proof of authorization in a particular type of airspace. That's just assumed at that point. So I think it's cool that your company's very open about your recommendations for a pilot, how they should be flying with your insurance, and what makes sense for them based upon the capacity that they're willing to work or able to work as a commercial pilot.
Totally. And I think that really, I remember one time, I was talking with one of my, coworkers, and it was they were saying, what is it that we sell, right? What is it that Skywatch sells? And the obvious answer is insurance. But realistically, what we sell is peace of mind. And it sounds cliche, but if you need to get your approvals and you need to do this and you need to do that, take insurance out of the question. Like, get your month policy, get your certificate of insurance, and close that deal. Don't let insurance be any more complicated, or don't let that delay you from being able to get other authorizations, because obviously I have no control over, what other drone related drone companies are doing. But what I can offer you is to get your insurance, done, and that way you can focus on everything else, and you don't have to look back on insurance. And I think that's what's important, is that like, insurance shouldn't be anything that holds you up. Yes, obviously the price is a factor, and I understand that completely, of course. But you are paying for more than just you're getting liability, but you're also paying for like having that one extra thing checked off your checklist. That's going to make your life a lot easier when you actually need to take care of other responsibilities.
Oh, absolutely. And I caution any drone pilots that would be watching or listening to this on Spotify. I would caution you, because I know that the price tag is a big thing, and it's not abundantly expensive. First off, it's not anything that's going to break the piggy bank per se. But if you are hesitant about those price tags, a great analogy that I use is when you break a propeller on your drone, you don't continue flying with that broken propeller, because what would have cost you $10, $12 to replace that propeller, it could cost you a lot more if you try to cut corners on those costs and save on those upfront expenditures. A lot of the times when you invest that little amount of money up front, you get a big payoff in the long term. So, definitely by no means am I saying that the price tag isn't worth it, or for any drone insurance or any type of insurance, whether it's drone or something else. It just gives you that peace of mind, exactly like you said, moving forward, that if something catastrophic happens, I'm going to be covered and those expenses won't come out of pocket.
Exactly. And then one other thing I do want to say about this is that obviously with an annual policy, you pay for, upfront the entire year. Mm-hmm. But with our monthly policies, it's not a subscription. We don't require you to sign off for 3 months. Mm-hmm. So if you need that 1 month coverage and it's just 1 month expense, you don't have to worry about like, this is a reoccurring expense. If you only need it for that 1 month and then you want to go back to the hourly option, you always have that ability. It's 30 days, and then you're not charged anymore if you opt out of it. So there's never any sort of like long-term subscription. You can totally go for a 1 month policy and then be done with it if that's what you need to do.
See, that's cool. And flexibility is always key when you're dealing with the commercial drone industry, because like I said, everything is so touch and go most of the time when it comes to cooperating with the weather, the client's needs, what your drone's capable of. All of those things come into play, and it makes things very liquid. So having an insurance company that can be fluid with us is super, super helpful. Yuval, I have one more question for you. We talked a little bit at the beginning before we started the recording. You said you don't fly drones, but do you have any interest in flying drones? Is that something that you want to do or explore?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, as I mentioned, even before I started working at Skywatch, I had never worked in insurance either. And working with drone pilots and like understanding, the importance of insurance, I went and became a licensed broker and everything. So I really think that working at Skywatch has like built my interest in so many things. And I always said the next thing I would want to do is to go actually and become, Part 107 certified, because that's the next thing. We do have a number of drones at the office. So obviously, now obviously I'm not working at the office, but when we did, we always would have kind of like company gatherings and go out and understand, how to fly and how to operate. And definitely something that I've always been interested in. I just, right at this moment, it's not something that I see happening soon. But I think for me, working with so many drone pilots, that's kind of where I get my, drone fix. So like I hear about all the new equipment, or I hear about the new drones that come out, and I hear about, the things that drone pilots are doing. Like one of my favorite things about, work is like really knowing where all of our policies are being used. So, I'll have a client who's working on this operation or this operation, and, knowing what drones are being used for in the United States is really remarkable. And that's really one of my favorite parts, is knowing where, how drones are benefiting and how people are incorporating them into their workflows. That's really been like what's so interesting to me. So we'll see what happens. Obviously I would love to one day purchase my own drone, but for now it's I'm strictly on the insurance side.
I recommend it for anybody. I'm sort of like Joe Rogan on his podcast tells everybody they need to do jujitsu. I tell everybody they need to go out and buy a drone. I think that it's just such an interesting technology that everybody can come to appreciate at some level. So whenever you're ready, feel free to email me and I'll be happy to steer you in the right direction. I'm sure you've got a lot of input from people you work with though too.
I think that's what's so funny is that I'm like, if anything, I have all these people now that I'm in touch with who have great experience and are such a good resource, so I just need to go out and do it. But we'll see. Obviously, obviously I will make it known when that day comes.
Well, yeah, please do, because I'm more than happy to help. But we talked with Yuval Caspi from Skywatch, a little bit about their insurance. If you need any more information about Skywatch, how you can start using Skywatch, Yuval, would you mind telling us a website or where they can find you guys at?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is just skywatch.ai. And then if you ever want to get in touch with our support team, the email is support@skywatch.ai, and they're very responsive. They'll always get back to you, answer any questions. Our phone number can be found on the website. So if you just log into the website, you can always call too. Yeah.
Excellent.
And we're also on social media, of course. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Follow us on Instagram and everything.
Absolutely. So, hey, thank you so much for your time, Yuval. It's been an awesome conversation. I hope to have you on again.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much for inviting me. I enjoyed this a lot.
All right, guys. Hey, until next time, this is Chris, the Drone Geek, and I am out of here. See you later.